Good morning, friends. We are back today with a brand new math unit. We are beginning Unit 8 today, and we are on Lesson 8.1. So today you need your math journal and a pencil. You do not actually need a piece of paper, but you are going to need a ruler. So if you want to hit pause and run grab a ruler and come on back, that would be fine. All right, we are going to start with mental math. I am going to show you some fraction circles, and I would like you to decide whether the shaded part is less than, greater than, or equal to 1/2. Let's look at the first one. When you look at the shaded part of this fraction circle, is it greater than, less than, or equal to 1/2? That shaded part was 2/3. And 2/3, that's a funky 2. 2/3 is greater than 1/2. All right, let's look at the next one together. When you look at the shaded part of this fraction circle, is it greater than, less than, or equal to 1/2? So the shaded part of that fraction circle was 2/4. And 2/4 is equivalent to 1/2. All right, we have one more fraction circle to look at. Take a look at this fraction circle. Is the shaded part, well, it's actually a half circle, is the shaded part greater than, less than, or equal to 1/2? That shaded part was 1/3, and 1/3 is less than 1/2. All right, we are going to look really carefully at a ruler today, and we've been talking about breaking a ruler into 1/2-inch segments, and today we're going to be looking at breaking a ruler into 1/4-inch segments. All right, so if you look at your ruler, and I have one on the screen, you can see that most rulers have a bunch of tick marks on them, which we have up until this point kind of ignored. We've talked about 1/2 inches, and today we're going to talk about 1/4 inches, or 1/4, 2/4, 3/4 inches. So right now, would you just focus on the space between 0 and 1 inch? Between 0 and 1 inch, could you identify where 1/2 inch would be? Yes, as we've said, 1/2 is always going to come halfway between 0 and 1. Now, if you would look at the space between 0 and 1/2, the space between 0 and where we just made that half mark, if you look halfway between there, that is what we call 1/4 or 1/4. Now, look at the space between 1/2 and 1/2. Halfway between 1/2 and 1/2 is what we call 3/4. And the reason we call it that is because that means the space between 0 and 1 is broken into 1, 2, 3, 4 equal parts. So I could label above the 0, 0/4, 1/4. The halfway point is 2/4, 3/4, and then 1/2. It could also be called 4/4, but we always usually call whole numbers by their name. The same is true between 1 and 2 inches. If you look only between 1 and 2 inches and found the halfway point, go ahead and find it on your ruler. It would be right there. That would be 1/2 and 1/2. So if something measured to that tick line, it would be 1.5 inches long. If you look between 1/2 and 1.5, halfway between is the 1/4 mark, so that would be 1 and 1/4. And then between 1.5 and 2, halfway between there, is your 1 and 3/4 mark. So again, between 1 and 2, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 equal spaces. The same will be true between 2 and 3, between 3 and 4, and so on and so forth. Between every inch from one whole number to the next, if you broke it into 4 equal parts, that is what we call fourths. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, then the whole number. All right, we are going to practice measuring to the nearest fourth, or sometimes we call the fourth a quarter. We're going to practice measuring to the nearest 1/4 inch. Okay, so I would like you to open up your journals now to page 252. Hit pause if you need to, and then restart when you're on page 252. It says, use ruler D. Well, you can just use any ruler you have at home to measure the line segments below to the nearest 1/4 inch, or 1/4 of an inch. So, using my ruler that we had just looked at, of course, to measure this line segment, I'm going to line the 0 up with one end and see where the line segment ends. I can see that it ends between the whole number 2 and the whole number 3. And if I was measuring to the nearest whole inch, I would say that this is about 3 inches. But we're measuring to the nearest 1/4 inch. So you'll remember that between whole numbers, there are fourths. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. So if I'm looking, which of those does this line segment line up with? 1/4, 2/4, or 3/4? Yes, this line segment is closest to the 3/4 mark. So I'm going to look at the last whole number, which was 2, and say that this line segment is 2 3/4 inches long. Let's come down to number 2. Again, you're going to line up your 0 with the end of the line segment, and then look down at the other end to see which 1/4 inch mark it comes closest to. It ends right at the whole number 4. If we're measuring to the nearest 1/4 inch, is it okay to have an answer that's a whole number? It is, because as we mentioned, between each whole number is a fourth, so really this could be called 16/4, but we don't usually call for that. We would just call it the whole number 4. So this is 4 inches. And then come down and see if you can do the last one on your own. Line up your 0, see where it ends, and write down what you think that measurement is to the nearest fourth. I notice that it ends halfway between 2 and 3. Halfway between 2 and 3 is what we would call 2 1/2. So you could answer that 2 1/2. Or we could also call 2 1/2, there it is, 2 1/2. It's the same thing as 2 2/4. All right, your job today is to turn the page and complete 253 on your own. Then please do Math Boxes 8-1 and Homelink 8-1. See you tomorrow. Bye.